Every great business begins with a bold idea. Welcome to Mission Entrepreneurship, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of extraordinary entrepreneurs who've defied the odds. Discover the relentless spirit and creative minds of those who dared to innovate and take risks. Together, we'll reveal the grit and determination it takes to achieve the unthinkable mission of entrepreneurship. If you choose to accept it. All right, hello, y'all. Welcome to Mission Entrepreneurship, where we dive deep into the things that build successful entrepreneurs and people who have had to defy the odds, go against the grain. Today, I'm with Zach Carlin. He is a personal friend of mine. He's was a professional fighter, personal trainer, and then he has started Summit Chasers Network, where he helps out other businesses and helps them excel. Zach Carlin, how are you doing today?
Good, brother. It's weird hearing you say my whole name. I like it though, because I feel so buttoned up now. It's like, damn right. Say it
Yeah,
again.
except for I'm the only one with buttons.
Yeah, that's true. I don't have any. How you doing, man? It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you. Um, so like I know a little bit about your background and everything. We spent a lot of time together. We've known each other for a while. You also were my personal trainer for a while, and you helped me get past.
Mhm,
I had an injury and I couldn't get past deadlifting more than 135 because of a bad lower back.
mhm.
This man got me to like 450 in like 3 months.
I mean, you did it, but I helped. Yes, but that was you.
So the where I'd like to get started with you, Zach, is what's your background? Like where did you come from? Like what was like where did you grow up? And tell me a little bit about what kind of led you to fighting and personal training.
Yeah, it's so I grew up in a small town, Claresholm, Alberta, Canada, which is actually where I am right now, staying with my parents for a little bit, looking after them. Uh, but where I started was not probably if you were to see what I do now and go on our website and see the clients that we're working with and kind of what we're doing now, it it wouldn't be probably the typical background you would see. So yeah, I grew up in a small town. I was the hockey kid kind of growing up, but underneath I was a miserable hockey kid growing up.
Mhm.
And I ended up in this kind of town. It's one of those smaller towns where you have two kind of paths that you take when you're a kid. You either play hockey or you do drugs. Well, I've been an overachiever my whole life, Steve. So I did both. And eventually the drugs won, and I ended up in a very bad place for a too long of a period of time. But in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't too long. But I ended up in a really bad place. I ended up, and I was living out of a trailer, really had nothing to my name. I didn't know who I was, where I wanted to go, and all this kind of stuff. And it wasn't until, and I have to give my parents a lot of credit as well, but it wasn't until I had a boxing coach, his name's Gord, who really kind of kicked my ass out of the place what I was in. And the one thing that he said to me, and again, this isn't a guy who he doesn't he was he was a boxer who had brain damage and then went into doing security at a club, ended up getting hit over the head, so he had more brain damage. So he wasn't who you would again typically take life advice from, but sometimes those are the places where you find the best advice and even sometimes the best business advice. And the one thing that he said when he was kicking my ass, I was falling asleep on a one of those like horizontal tube slide things in the downtown park here in Claresholm, and he kicked me in the leg as hard as he fucking could. It hurt so bad, like get kicked in the calf. Go get kicked in the calf and tell me that doesn't hurt. But and he picked me up and he said, "Man, you got to start taking responsibility for your shit." Unless it's something that your parents say, right? It's
Yeah,
like, okay, yeah, I'll take
yeah.
responsibility, whatever. Like, screw off. And I was like, yeah, okay, I get it. I know I do. I hear this all the time. He's like, no, you don't get it, dude. You got to take responsibility for everything, and you have to do it on purpose. Like even if like this stuff, you blame the cops, you can blame people in the town that don't want to hire you and all this kind of stuff, whatever it is. You have to take responsibility for that. It's on you. Even things that aren't obvious that they're your fault. You have to learn to take responsibility for those things. And I was still like very like whatever, dude. Just get like stop. Your breath stinks. Get away from me. And he was like, "Do you like admitting that you'd have no control over your life?" And that, like, got my attention. I was like, "No, what are you talking about?" My ego starts coming out, right? I have control. He's like, "If you blame everybody else, if you don't take responsibility for everything, you're just admitting that you have no control over shit." And I was like that was kind of my light bulb, part of my light bulb moment. It was like the thing that started the flywheel, right? So I was like, "Fuck you, I have control." So I got out of just proving them wrong, I was like, "Okay, well, what do I gotta do now?" Um, so I ended up, kinda rekindling my relationship with my parents, moved back in with them, got a job, and just started the momentum. And that's when I had a sister that had moved to Las Vegas, and that's where at the time, this was 2009, I think, when Vegas was really kind of the pinnacle of martial arts, and I was training in martial arts. That's what I wanted to do, and I wanted to take it seriously. And I was like, "This is kind of an opportunity to get out of Clarkson and see the world and that kind of thing." So, a recovering drug addict moving to Las Vegas probably isn't the best choice, but I did it, and it worked out pretty well. So I fought professionally for a few years, and then an injury took me out. Ended up moving back to Canada, and that's where two things happened. I realized I wasn't a fighter. I don't like getting hit. I didn't like hitting other people, but I also realized that I wanted something else. Like I'm more capable of more than that. Like my identity was always on sports, athleticism, this kind of thing. And I realized really quickly that I was capable of more when I joined this gym, started competing in CrossFit, but they had brought me in and started coaching and started helping their athletes before I really even knew much about the sport itself. I was able to pick things up really quickly and start coaching athletes really, really quickly and this kind of stuff. And I had been in fitness for 10 years prior to that. Like I knew that space. I knew a lot about, human biology and this kind of stuff because I was just very interested in it. But I picked it up really quickly. But what I started learning that I didn't realize I was actually falling in love with was the business side of things. And I ended up buying into one of the gyms that were there, running that for a little while, looking at my first profit and loss statement and being like, what the fuck is going on? This doesn't make any sense. People are paying like $200 a month. Why are we in the red? And so I started getting obsessed with why is that? Turns out there's especially a brick and mortar business than that. But I ended up getting obsessed with that as well as competing in CrossFit. So I ended up what a version of a professional athlete in CrossFit would be. Competed all around the world, France, Dubai, all over the US, all over Canada, and I got pretty good at it. But I was always obsessed. I was always more obsessed with the business side of things. I ended up buying and flipping a couple more gyms, about half a dozen of them, and then opened up a fitness equipment company in Edmonton, Alberta. It was a fitness equipment company and a logistics company. We scaled that really, really quickly. Again, falling more in love with the business side of things, realized that's where my passion was. Had my daughter. We moved back to Las Vegas. I came on to a company. Probably a lot of people have seen their ads. They spend so much money on ads, V-Shred. And so they brought me on to start building out their online fulfillment platform. We grew that really, really quickly. I realized I wanted to go do my own thing. And I went to go start a gym in 2019. Everybody knows what happened shortly after 2019. COVID hit and the industry went into shambles. We didn't know what was going on, if it was ever going to come back, if it was ever going to look the same, and we lost everything. Ended up having to, like, got lost everything to the point where I had to work for Netflix, customer service and Netflix in the garage with, and it was in the summertime when this was going on in the garage, and how hot it gets there. And I had a little air conditioning thing that I had to like shove up my shorts while I was on the phone with grandma, showing her how to program her remote so she could watch Netflix. And this was a pretty big low for me. I just had my sons. We had a newborn and a daughter, and this was a new low for me because again, I grew up where the man has to provide. Like you have to be the one to provide things for the family, and I was failing. Especially there's a game that we all play. There's a status game that we all play, and I came from up here. Like I had a business, a successful business. We had a ton of money, and I put all this money in this other business, and then lost everything. So I had lost, perceivably, I'd lost a ton of status, as well as I had all these other things that were on my plate, on my shoulders, that were my responsibility. And that was as low as I've probably ever been, even lower than when I was sleeping in playgrounds when I was 17 years old. And I looked at my son and my daughter, and I was like, well, this isn't where our story is going to end. So I got back on the horse and I started looking, I started networking, started flexing that muscle again. And I met my previous business partner, and he had a little small gym that he had opened back up in the midst of COVID downtown Las Vegas. And we ended up scaling a small 1,100 square foot gym to doing well over 200,000 a month, which is pretty outrageous for a little place like that. Just bringing all of my knowledge that I had from running businesses before in sales, fitness. I'll always say that sales and fitness is going to be one of the best foundations for learning how to sell ever, because you're selling a bunch of work that they might get the thing that they want, and there's still no guarantee. So that foundation of sales is very strong, and it seems underrated, but it's not. It's the best foundation. It's the best core of your sales experience that you can have. But anyways, and the stuff that we were doing was very popular with like corporate executives, because it was downtown Las Vegas. We're getting a lot of these people who are unhealthy. They're starting to realize, oh, if I'm healthy, I'm not going to get as sick. Imagine that. So we were working with a lot of these individuals, and one of them was he owned the second biggest bail bonds company in California. And he came to us and he was like, this would work with my like leadership team, like these accountability processes that you guys are using, these leadership processes and theories that you guys are practicing right now, and your sales process too. Like, you guys could teach this. And we're like, yeah, sure. We thought of that. We didn't think of shit. We were just like, yeah, sure. Sounds like a cool opportunity. So 4.5 weeks later, he flew us out to San Diego. And in that time, we put this program together and we presented it to him, and it went really well. And then we made that shift from focusing on just fitness and wellness to focusing on corporate sales leadership and accountability, and ended up growing that. And we ended up working with companies like SalesForce, Car Gurus, Hewlett Packard when they acquired Zerto, ABB, Farmers Insurance, and then obviously a lot of small and medium sized businesses, which that's where my heart was helping the small businesses, the medium sized businesses that felt stuck. They're running on a hamster wheel, and that's where I wanted to focus. Kind of, I didn't want to hand out band-aids and buoys anymore. I wanted to solve root causes, because we come into these companies. I'm like, you don't have a sales problem. You don't know how to hire anybody. You have no processes. Your culture sucks. So I wanted to solve actual problems. So I made a shift, and I ended up working fractionally with a client of ours, as me and my partner were building up Summit Chasers over in Arkansas, and here we are now. We work with small to medium sized businesses on developing their strategy and foundational structures in their business.
Nice. One thing there's a few things in here that I definitely want to touch on. Uh, for one, Zach, just wow, one thing I always like try to get across and everything is like as a recovering a drug addict myself, I actually met you like right when I was going through
You're
that
just,
whole. Yeah, I just got clean, and then I met Zach, and when he was working on doing the personal training in the gym with that partner before they started to coach these big businesses. And I will I remember, because what you were saying was the um how you're trying to sell something that's not guaranteed to
mhm,
these people,
mhm,
because everybody walks in, everybody, "Oh, I want a six pack, I want this, I want that." I remember I actually said that. I was like, "I've never had a six pack, I would like to have one."
yeah,
And I walked in, and it's like, and what the one thing I will never forget is, because I've been to trainers before, and it always just felt like, all right, um, I'm going to pay you a bunch of money, but as soon as I pay you money, you're just going to tell me to do 10 reps of this and 10 reps of that.
yeah,
And that's it. And it just wasn't personable. And I was just like, well, what's the difference? Like, I could just go figure out all this stuff on my own.
mhm,
But there's also understanding that having skin in the game, money in the game makes it, makes you more motivated.
mhm,
But I remember that you're having those issues with motivation. And, but like the way that you came at me, I remember it was so different. You were so reassuring that if I put in the work, you're gonna be there.
mhm,
And I remember I was going through some of the hardest times of my life, and you were there through like all of that.
mhm,
And on top of it, I got into the best shape of my entire life. I mean, I felt like
mhm.
I could eat glass back then. And But,
Mm,
uh, uh, but the thing was, um, the I wanna put that out there, but it was like how you were with people, and then I remember when you started coaching these companies, I actually had somebody from my hometown actually hit me up and asked me
yeah.
about you because she was being coached by you. Because
Mhm.
you started coaching all these people across the entire country, and I mean, it was amazing. The main thing though that I wanted to touch on was the moment that you were sitting there, you decided like, hey, I'm really getting into this business side of stuff. I'm going to open up a gym,
Mm,
and everything crashes, which just like
mm,
threw us all for a whirlwind back then. So
mm,
everything crashes, and you're in the garage, but you're looking at your kids,
mhm.
and you're like, this isn't where this story ends. And that's one big thing. Those moments are like the moments that I really want to drive into our audience, is
Mhm.
that moment where you hit a spot where you're like, I'm not going to we're not going back. This isn't it. This is like, I'm moving forward. In
Mhm.
that moment, what what was that huge I know you mentioned your kids, but I just wonder if you could just kinda talk
Yeah.
a little bit more about that moment and drive in there, like, what was that thing that was like, "Nope, this isn't where it ends."
Mhm. You know, and if you talk to a lot of or you listen to their stories of a lot of successful individuals, and then obviously there's some that have things handed to them and that kind of stuff, but most of them, the ones that we know about, the ones that are actual, that have influence, is they all have 1 or 2, maybe 3 moments where they're faced with a choice. And my choice at that moment in my head was I keep going and I keep trying and I keep being the one and I keep trying to be the one and figure it out that's going to support and give these kids the life that I know that they deserve, or I'm going to take myself out of the equation and let somebody else try. Like it was getting to that kind of point. And I'm not saying that that's going to be that's not going to be everybody's choice, right? Everybody's choice is going to look a little bit different, but everyone comes to a point in their life where they're going to face a choice similar to that, where it's either I'm going to keep going, I'm not going to give up on this, I'm going to keep the vision and the goal fixed, but how I get there, I'm going to be willing to do what it takes and shift and figure it out. It might not look exactly how I'm envisioning it right now, but how I get there doesn't matter anymore. I'm going to figure it out. You have that choice or you have the easy way. And whatever the easy way looks like for you, that's it's your story. But that was probably my definitely it was my first big, realization of like this is my choice. This is it. This is the choice. This is that moment in my life where I'm at the fork in the road and I got to make a choice. And it was it's hard to say if I didn't have if my kids weren't around at the time, who knows what the choice would have been. But it's if I didn't have that anchor, if I didn't have that thing to hold on to, and again at this point it was your kids. Some people it could be other parts of your family, it could be wife, husband, whatever it is. It could be parents, it could be just other people that rely on you, whatever it is. But how important it was to have that anchor, to have that thing in your life that is so strong, that is immovable, that you can base decisions off of. Uh, so whether it's kid, you got to find that and find it. Don't wait to find that anchor when you're faced with that decision. You got to find it early on. Find your purpose. And we say that it seems fluffy, and people make your vision boards and all this kind of stuff, but it is so important. We are nothing without purpose, and that's one big reason why we're seeing a lot of mental health issues anymore, because life is almost too easy in some cases. Like we're born and I'm not born without a purpose, but we don't latch on to a purpose. We don't intentionally go and find what our purpose is. What is the impact I want to make? What makes me happy? What problem do I want to solve? Who do I want to help? Who is my tribe? Who are these people that I'm willing to work for? And a lot of people, it's hard for them to find that. It's hard for them to define that. So find your purpose early on. And my purpose was living and breathing in front of me, but it was a choice that I had to make.
Um, yeah, and then, finding your purpose, that's that's everything. It is, and I
Yeah.
mean, when like you were saying, like looking at the world today, it's a lot of people without purpose, so they're looking for the first thing that
Mm.
feels that feels right, whether it's LGBTQ or whether
Social
it's
media in general. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's just finding something to fight for because you don't understand what you really want to fight for,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
it's missing a lot. I remember I had a really rough moment right before the start of Arizona Off Grid Solutions, and it actually was my dogs. I
Mhm.
had just gotten these two dogs, and I had this like little rough moment that I was going through, but then I turned around and was just like I live off grid. I got to build this place. I got to take care of these guys, and that actually inspired me in that moment. I've also had some more moments like that. Um, but like in that moment, I just really like that she brought that up because like
Mhm.
that's that's where it all is.
Yeah.
Now, I remember you moved out to Arkansas and now you're running Summit Chasers. Could you tell me a little bit about Summit Chasers, where that came from, and how that all started up, and what your goals are with it, and just tell me all
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, I'll tell you all about it. So we, like I said in my initial, my previous agency, we focused on like just sales leadership, and that kind of stuff, which was a lot of fun. I learned a lot from doing that, from both running a service based business that's not doesn't you don't have a product, you have something that you're creating, really. You're just utilizing all these skills that you've stacked, and then you've created this thing that's really just thin air, and then you're trying to sell it, right, and attach it to a problem and then sell it. So that experience was great. But as far as what we were actually doing with our clients, again, I felt like I was handing out band-aids and buoys. I wasn't solving the actual problem. And when you're not, again, we talk about purpose and being true to what you want to do and who you are and what you want to represent. It's important that you're staying in line with that as much as you can. So I made the shift. We had a client, and I took a job fractionally, and we moved out to Arkansas. And but I always knew it was a great job. I loved them, but I always knew that it wasn't going to be the forever thing. There was something else that we wanted to do. And Adrena, my partner now, both life and business partner, uh, we were driving. We went on a drive one day. We went to, I can't remember. It was like this. It was a weird town. We realized really quickly, Arkansas. We lived in the nice place. Like, don't go visit other places. But anyways, we're traveling. We're exploring, and we put on a book. We put on "Find Your Why" by Simon Sinek. And in this book, it was really cool because it gave you like exercises to do, and it was like find a partner and do these exercises with. So we're in the car together. We're like, "Wow, this is good timing." And we went through these exercises, and a lot of them around like, what's your purpose? What impact do you want to make? Who do you want to help? If you lost everything right now, where would you kind of what would you kind of lean into and that kind of stuff? What skills do you have? How can you utilize them? This kind of stuff. So, and we realized really quickly that we're really in line with what we wanted to do. And she had grown a performance marketing company from nothing to it was 100 million, $70 million company. So she's very savvy when it comes like operational, like business operational structures and operating systems and that kind of stuff. So we kind of, and I'm like the visionary. I'm like the business guy, sales guy, the one that comes up with the crazy ideas, and she's a really good executor. So we figured out really quickly that like kind of fit, kind of makes sense. And then we're like, yeah, let's at least test out the concept. And I was just at a big conference in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and I was networking again, keeping in mind that we were going to be starting. I was going to be starting I was going to be doing something. I'm starting a business, and I had made some really good contacts. We're like, let's create this MVP, the minimally viable product based on a LOFA, which is an acronym for leap of faith assumptions. So it's things that you do when you're starting a business where you're just taking your best guess based off of data, based off things that you can see and you've experienced on what the market would need and how you would fulfill upon that need itself without getting customer reactions and customer feedback sort of thing. So we created this program. We brought one of them on as a client, and it went really fucking well. We're like, oh, cool, okay, well, let's go all in, and we did, and we went all in on Summit Chasers, and what we really focused on was the business foundations. Again, we don't want this isn't band-aids and buoys. This isn't quick fixes. This isn't another marketing tactic. This isn't AI, although we utilize AI in some capacity, but it's not an AI product. That's just we're slapping on them. We're again, it's not a band-aid. We're focusing on how do you bring the right people and how do you identify the right people for your business, and then how do you bring them in? Do you have your systems and processes documented? If you don't, have you tested out what the right systems and processes are? Have you identified leaks and opportunities? Have you a big one that we do is we help businesses create a coherent business strategy. There's a lot of fluff out there on what business strategy is and a lot of misconceptions on what true strategy really is. It's a lot of, template style goal setting, vision boards, rah statements, and this kind of stuff. That was a big thing. That's a big thing that we do. And that's part of the strategy core challenge that you're going to be a part of. Is how does a business look at their market, look at their strengths and weaknesses? How do you leverage these things appropriately, and then how do you create a coherent action plan based on principles, based on guiding principles, to move your business forward and make these decisions? What does your organizational structure need to look like? Do you need to be setting your processes up for long-term forecasting, or do you need to set your processes up for quick experimentations and then allocating resources to the most successful experiment, rinse and repeat? Um, that's a lot of what we do with businesses is we set them on the right path, set them up for those foundational pieces, is people, process, purpose, and strategy, and set them up for long-term success.
Nice. Yeah, I'm super excited for this challenge, by the way.
It's gonna be
Yeah,
sick. I'm excited about it.
yeah. I just started. I was looking over everything, and finally just got all signed up in there. And I was actually about to introduce myself, but then I had to start this interview on your
You
network.
have to do it afterwards.
So now you have Summit Chase's network going. The one thing that I will say is to our audience that you as a coach is just amazing.
Mhm,
Anything that this man coaches, he always seems to always have the right answer. I remember something that you told me about my business when I first started Arizona Off Grid Solutions.
yeah,
Um, it was the why now? Why now?
mhm,
Because while I'm talking to people about, solar and all of that, and then it's like, well, why now? Why do
mhm,
they need to pay for this right now? Because they're all like, yeah, we're thinking about it. Yeah, we want it one day, and so forth. And then it was like really sitting down, and I took that, and we started to actually use that quite a bit. The election coming up, how crazy everything is right now, like getting off grid, it's just it feels so much better and so much safer, like,
mhm.
you know so the thing I also wanted to touch on was you you and your partner, your
Mhm,
personal and business partner,
mhm.
are together and running this business. And I remember for a while there, or you still are, you've been traveling the road and talking to all these businesses and everything. How has that been working with your personal partner as well as your business partner on the road?
Been, sunshine, rainbows, and lollipops, my friend. It's it's been good for the most part. Like, we're really lucky. Like, we are very lucky. We found kind of the yin and yang, so to speak, sort of thing, right? So, we're luckier than I think a lot of individuals who are going through, and we work with some of the business owners that we work with there, husband, wife kind of business duos, and we see them, the issues that they have and the challenges that they have with this and juggling certain things, and we're like, "Ooh, we got lucky here." But it's still that doesn't mean it doesn't come with its challenges. And this is actually, I think, some advice that I gave you. One thing that uh, it seems silly, especially sometimes when we do it, it seems silly. But one thing that really helped us is really intentionally splitting up what conversation are we currently having right now. Because if you don't, what happens is sometimes I'll approach her randomly. She's not in business mode. She's not in figuring things out. She's not solving problems and this kind of stuff. She's, reading the romance book, or she's just hanging out, whatever it is. And I come up to her in my business with my business hat on, and I start like, "Hey, did we get this done? Hey, is this done? We need to start doing this. Hey, do you think that we could start working on this?" And she's just like, "Why are you coming at me like that, man?" Like, so she's again, she thinks that I'm talking to her. We're mixing those up. We're mixing those lines up, right? The line's blurry, and this is something I said to you. The line's blurry at that point, and you start to take things personally. You see them as an attack. You whatever it is. So it's putting these processes in place and these activities or these actions in place where we're clearly separating those two conversations, those two personas that we have to really embody. So it's as simple as, hey, right now I need to have a conversation as your business partner. So I want to put that hat on, right? Or this is a mask. I guess that's a hat. I'm going to put this hat or mask on, whatever you want to say, and we're going to have a conversation as like business partners. Are you okay with that right now? And then we have the conversation, and it takes all the blurry lines out. It takes the feelings of personal attacks. It takes all those types of things out of the equation. And then after we have the conversation, it's like, all right, I'm boyfriend Zach now. So how you doing? How you feeling? But it helps. It helps a lot doing that. Just knowing where you're coming from, knowing where each other is coming from, what the intentions are, and another thing too is never leaving. Like, don't go to bed angry. Don't go to bed second guessing anything. Like, if we need to take time, if we need to take space, let them know I'm not angry. We're still good. I just need to take some space. I need to think about some things and clear my head, and just make sure that those, like, you're clearly communicating those things, because there's just so much going on. There's so many lines that could be crossed. Therefore, there's so many misconceptions. There's so many stories that we could start thinking up in our head and this kind of stuff. So putting everything out there as much as possible and communicating is really, really important. And then when we were on the road doing this, it was two kids, four dogs, and us running a business out of a 20. I mean, you've seen the trailer, it's not huge. 20, because it gets pulled with a Jeep. So it's like that big, right? Was being very rigid, even more rigid. So with those things, like, this time is our time, this time is business time, this time is this time we are packing things up, traveling, kids, very, very intentional with it. But again, drawing those lines has been the most important thing that we've been doing.
Yeah. I actually have used that advice last night. Take a second, and then, hey, speaking to you as your business partner now with Carly, and it
Mhm.
actually has worked out so much better. My next question is branding. When it came to branding, when it, with Summit Chasers, could you speak to me a little bit more about branding and how that journey went with creating the logos, getting out there, like people seeing you,
Mhm.
and what type of strategies did you use to get your exposure?
Yeah, we hired somebody to figure it out. No, I'm joking. And a lot of businesses, they do. They hire somebody to figure it out for them, which I don't recommend. You have to. There has to be some sort of trial and error. There has to be some sort of figuring it out for yourself to begin with. Is especially if you're running businesses where you are so heavily involved in being in the front. You're very market forward, like with our content. We're coaches. We are consultants. We're business partners. We have to be very, like, our personalities, our being, our faces have to be out there. So if and a lot of business owners, they, especially in the service space, even even in home improvement and that kind of stuff, they make the mistake of hiring these brand development companies really early on, when they don't even know, like, you don't even know what information to give them to then create, the logos and the messaging and the communication feel, and even just the colors that you pick. Sometimes those can be, the feel can be off, right? When you don't even know what is your own personality within this market.
Mm.
Like, for us, we really had to get it out there, and we just went on. I think it was free. No, it wasn't. We went on Fiverr, and it was like $50, and we got a logo made that we're like, yeah, good enough for now, because it can change. And we just put ourselves out there. We started the podcast. We started putting content out there. We saw which one got more engagement, which one got less. We started to find our own voice. We started to develop our own frameworks, our own kind of way of delivering the frameworks, our own way of fulfilling. fulfilling with our clients, and we started to identify who were we attracting in. And there's one thing I got some really good advice from a marketer who I had on my podcast. He's a best-selling author. I recommend all of his books, The One Page Marketing Plan and Lean Marketing, Alan Dibb. But one thing he said is stuff for your people, not people for your stuff. So stuff for your people. Find out who your people are. Find out what they want, how they want to be communicated to, where they're at in their buying cycle. Where are you meeting these people in their buying cycle? And then once you know those things, you know what kind of messaging to put out there. You know what attracts people. You know how these people speak. You know the problems that they have. You know all these types of things, right? And then when you're able to match your voice, your brand voice, your personality, right? What you want this business to be represented as, how you're fulfilling upon things, then you can start put things in stone. Then hire the marketing company, right? And start developing your logos, or start to put more thought into the logos and the color schemes and where your what playing fields you're playing in. And by that I mean a lot of people they go right to like Google Ads, or they go right to developing a website in itself. Sometimes you don't even need a website, you just need a landing page and really strong socials. Should I be more involved on Facebook or TikTok? Should I be more involved on LinkedIn or what? Like, where are your people hanging out? And then focus on that. Focus on that. Go an inch wide, mile deep with who you know is your current ICP, which is your ideal customer profile. And then again, once you've had all that figured out, then you can start to get fancy. Then you can start getting the brands. You know what speaks to people. You know what would pull them in, and then start to develop it. Because your brand is for a lot of, especially small businesses, your brand is you. Especially at the beginning, your brand is you, and
Mhm.
then you can slowly start to kind of pull away a little bit once the brand is the company, the brand is the business now, the brand is your people, it's the culture. Then you can kind of start to pull away, but you got to figure out what that is first. How do you talk to your people? Who are your people? And then kind of go from there.
All right. Yeah, yeah. Carly was the one in charge of basically doing all the branding
Yeah.
with Arizona Off Grid Solutions, and I'll never forget. We're only 6 months in right now, and I walk around anywhere in Dolan Springs, White Hills, that whole
Mhm.
area. I'm the solar guy. I
Yeah.
walk around, everybody's like, "Hey, you're the solar guy, aren't you?" And I even had my truck was I was doing a safety inspection in Vegas, and the inspector looked at me and said, "I've seen your commercials." And I'm out doing the work, and so
Mhm.
like I don't even realize just how much that outreach and just understanding that my brand became me with my dogs. So
Well,
I was
that's your brand,
like,
right? Like
it's
that's a big part of your brand. It's not the other stuff is important. It'll come, but what's more important is figuring out that. Create as much of that as you can, and then
exactly.
figure out the fancy shit.
So I just got a couple more questions. The one thing that I really, really just want to hone in is where you started to where you are. Did you during well first of all, I want to say that I would assume that you're in a pretty happy place, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
where you're going, the trajectory that you're on, it's the one you want to be on, right?
yeah. Mhm.
Yep. And I didn't mean for that to be a loaded question, like answering it for you, but uh with that said though, from where you started as a child in a small town, getting on having drug issues, hockey, overachiever, and going through the fighting and everything. Did you during that entire journey see yourself where you're at right now?
Oh, I don't think anybody did. I don't think anybody did because I attached a lot of my identity on sports and athleticism. I think the only other people that knew sort of what I was capable of was my parents. But again, they're your parents. They're like, yeah, whatever. You think your baby is always the cutest and smartest one, right? So it's kind of, but they could see it, right? They could see it. So I don't know. I still think sometimes they're surprised with some of the shit that comes out of my mouth anymore these days. But I didn't have a clue. Again, my identity was very much so just if I was going to make it, it was going to be as an athlete somewhere, something. or in the like in the fitness space, just kind of getting by in the fitness space. But if you were to say like, hey, in 2024, October 2024, you were gonna, have a business that acquired another business, and you're gonna go travel to Toronto and put on this big event and that kind of stuff. I would have been like, whatever, dude. Um, so, but and then I want to be thinking the same thing, a year or two down the road. We're not planning on stopping. We got a lot of big plans, but if you were to have said that when I was 19, 18, 19, I'd be like, whatever, shut up."
Yeah. So the one thing I want to hone in for our audience is, if you're following a passion, you're following what you feel is right for you in this moment. Because the thing is like when people talk about regrets and everything, you would always make the same decisions anyways, because you made the decisions that you made with
Mhm.
the amount of information you had at the time. We don't ever
Mm.
purposely make bad decisions. We only make decisions based the best decision we have based on the information that we have,
Yeah.
and that's where wisdom is grown. Uh if you're following your passion in the moment and you're following the things that you want in the moment and you keep going, you have no idea where it's going to lead you, or that you even wanted it to lead you there,
Mm.
until you're there and you realize that, oh, my next question is, do you have regrets, or has or has that whole journey, every piece of that journey, something you use today, or is there any piece that you wish you could cut out?
Oh, getting deep here. I would say the only big regrets we had is like one of the big determining factors, with me moving from Vegas to Arkansas, was that the company I was working with, they were flying the kids out every month to come stay with me. And then that's been the toughest. That's been the one thing that's been the toughest, is just this time away from the kids until we get back to Vegas. Then I'll be, full time with them and that kind of thing. But that would be the only real thing that I regret. But I may not regret that in a year. The point is, if you do have to make sacrifices like that, you be damn sure that they're not made for no reason.
Mhm.
Like there has to be reason. This has to I have to have made this sacrifice for some sort of greater outcome in the future. And that is something that's very motivating as well. Like that's something that talk about vision boards, it's something you put on the old vision board sort of thing. So as far as regrets, that would be the only thing. But again, it might not be in a year, right?
Mhm.
Regrets can change. Your perception of them can change as time goes. But and to your point, you never know the path, and everybody's path is different. And if you look at other people's, oh, they were a millionaire by the time they're 24, like that was their path, right? Maybe they'll be broke by the time they're 30, right?
Mhm.
That was part of their path too. And then we have 30, 35-year-olds that are just kind of getting to that point, and they're looking at the 23-year-olds like, ugh, why did it take me forever? I got 10 years behind on this guy. It was your path, right? You needed those experience to get to where you are. And now you're set up for a much more sustained growth and sustained success because you have all these lessons under your belt. And that's one thing that I tell a lot of people is, don't wait for your passion. Don't wait for your purpose to come and slap you in the face. Sometimes you need to go and do shit you don't innately love, or maybe you think you love it, but you're not going to find it if you truly love it or not, or if you could be great at it or not, if you just sit there and wait for something to happen. You have to go do shit. You have to go be willing to be shitty at things, right? And in the pursuit of getting good at stuff, you'll realize some things about yourself, what you do like, what you don't like. You'll meet some amazing people. You'll learn, you'll be able to they call like skill stacking, be able to stack skills that you wouldn't have stacked otherwise, that could again help create a stronger foundation for success in the future. So that's another thing I would say is, just don't be afraid to be shitty at things, and don't be afraid to pursue stuff, if even if it's not like, this isn't my passion, this isn't what I want to do the rest of my life. How do you know? Like go try, go do it, right? If you're not sure, like what else do you got to lose? Like go do shit and figure it out, and you're much more likely to figure it out if you go after stuff.
Got it. So, what are is there any future plans, or like where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh, I see myself hanging out at your ranch. uh, I mean, definitely. It's hard to say. Like we have a pretty like our trajectory is pretty clear right now. Like we want to be putting on bigger events, more events. So we have an event coming up October 22nd in Toronto for the Young Professionals Leadership Summit. We want to be able to put on more events, more in-person events, bring people together, uh, and really set more people up for success and kind of get the word out there, so to speak. But we don't just want it to be summit chasers. We want to be able to bring we take the network part of our name seriously, Summit Chasers Network. We want to bring as many experts in their field, as many people who want to make similar impact through different means together, to go and support people more as a whole. Right? We can't. The problem that we want to solve is making the success of small business owners expected rather than an anomaly, and we aren't. Uh, we're not dumb enough to think that we can do it alone. We need good people around us. We need great people on our team, and we have a great team now, which I'm very thankful for. But I kind of see in 5 years is that we have this true network of individuals who are aligned in the vision that are out there doing a lot of good and more on the more like business numbers success. Like we want to have in 5 years, we want to have a $500 million business portfolio under our belts of businesses that we've brought in, that we've taken equity in, and we're helping them thrive and succeed.
Nice. So you're going to be the guinea pig on this one question that I'm not sure if I'm going to leave in this and leave it in for every single one of these episodes, but I had a theory. Okay.
Mm, mm.
Um, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people who step outside the box. I have a theory, and you tell me if this is might be it might be too personal. That's the only reason why I'm nervous about this question. But I think, but I have a theory, and I'm trying to test it. So were you bullied in school, and did you stand up to your bully? Or, like, were you bullied at some point in time, and did you stand up to your bully, and what did standing up to that bully do
I
for you?
was actually
Oh,
grade 3. Don't remember their names, but that was why. So I was in karate, and I was a black belt by the time I was 8 years old, and some kids who were 3, 4 years older than you. And when you're in grade 3, like a grade 5 and 6er, like they might as well be Goliath at that point. It might as well be a cave troll from Lord of the Rings. Um, so they would always bully me, and I did there was one of them I stood up to, but it wasn't until, like, we were over 18. I think it was actually when I came back from I was coming back and visiting from Vegas after I had been fighting professionally, cage fighting for 3, 4 years, and he was in the bar, and I remembered him so because he had, like, a weird he was like he didn't grow up to be very attractive. I don't think I didn't need to get back at him, life already did. Um And I remember seeing him, and I'm just again, I had this bravado, like, you just have this like, when you do that type of training, whether it's in self-defense or whatever it is, like, you have this confidence, not necessarily like you wanna go in and start a bunch of fights, you just have this confidence of, like, if something was to happen, I'd be able to figure it out sort of thing, and so I just kind of approached him and his friends, and I was just by myself, and so, "Do you guys remember me?" Like, I was being very friendly, I was like, "Do you remember me?" And they're like, "No, who are you? You used to bully me when I was in grade 3." And all their faces went just white because they knew about me. It was a small town. A lot of people knew that I had
yeah,
left and done this kind of stuff. And they're like, "I am sorry. I don't want to start anything." All this kind of stuff. I'm like, "No, dude. I just was wondering if you remembered me because like I remembered you, and you're the reason I got into like karate and shit, and I started doing all this stuff." So I didn't necessarily stand up to them, but I guess it's funny what you take with you when you're a kid,
mhm,
like those types of
mhm,
things. Like whether it's traumatic things, but you don't you kind of brush it off for a long period of time of like it didn't affect me, it didn't do all these things, whatever it is. But if you really go back and you take like a systems thinking approach, it does have an impact on you.
yeah,
Like if they didn't do that, I might not have moved to Vegas, which then led me to start the businesses in the gym. So I kind of almost now if I was to meet him now, I'd almost thank him, right? So I
yeah,
did I did stand up to him, but I acknowledged it, right?
yeah, yeah. That's because that was kind of my theory is that a lot of people, because that we have it in the intro here about climbing that mountain. You want to climb Mount Everest, you can't stare at the peak. You got to look at that first step, that
Yeah, the
first
first
step,
half,
that
right.
first step, and then sooner or later you look up and there's the peak, and you're
Mhm,
you're there. So like I had this theory that a lot of people who overcome things were bullied at some
mhm,
point, and some people who are bullied, they kind of just stay that way, but then some will stand up or some will do something. And there's this idea that I have that at a young age pushes you to want to strive and want to like better yourself. And but that was my theory. Thank you for answering that question.
yeah.
So where can everybody find you? Where can they join your challenges? Where can like tell us everything about where we find Zach Carlin and Summit Chasers?
So Summit Chasers, you can go to summitchasersnetwork.com. If you want to find me and a lot of our content, we go live. We do 3 live shows every week, Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturday mornings. If you want to learn more about those, LinkedIn is really the best place to find me and see a lot of my content and learn about our challenges and that kind of stuff on there. So Zach Carlin on LinkedIn or Summit Chasers Network on LinkedIn. And then all of our live shows, they're all in our podcast. So we do 3 live shows and then 1 podcast that gets released every 2 weeks. And you can see all those things on our YouTube channel, Summit Chasers Productions, or you can go to Apple, Spotify, anywhere else that you can find podcasts and the Summit Chasers podcast on there.
All right. Thank you again, Zach Carlin. I really appreciate hearing your story. And once again, everyone, Zach, this man, like I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for this man and his coaching and just how much he cares about the people he helps. If you sign up or speak with him and everything, like one thing I will promise you is that this man is dedicated. He will do what it takes to help you get to where you want to be. Thank you, Zach, and I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you coming here and talking to us.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you very much for having me.